All right, my dear ferns, Edward is joining me today for chapter 12. Pixie is naughty. Morning school came to an end at last. Mr. Grimm rapped on his desk with his stick, Pixie's wand. "Attention, all of you," he said. "Dinner will be in 10 minutes' time. Anyone who is late, who has dirty hands or untidy hair, will go without dinner." Winks groaned. "Oh, it's awful," he said to Peter when Mr. Grimm had gone out. "There's never enough dinner for everyone, and so Mr. Grimm just says, 'Here, your hair is untidy,' or 'Here, your nails aren't clean,' and about a dozen of us have to go without our dinner." "What a dreadful school," said Peter. "Why don't you run away?" "But how can we?" said Winks. "You've seen the high wall around the grounds, and all the gates are locked. I do wish I could get out of here. It's a horrid place. I really would be good if I could escape." "Would there be room for him in the wishing chair, do you think?" whispered Molly to Pixie. "He's so nice. I would like to help him out." "So would I," whispered back Pixie. "Well, we'll see." Poor Pixie was one of those who had to go without his dinner. Mr. Grimm stood at the door of the dining hall as each brownie walked in. Ever so often he pounced on one of them and roared at him, "Here, you haven't washed behind your ears. No dinner for you. Here, why aren't your nails scrubbed? No dinner for you." And when Pixie tried to slip past him, he roared, "Here, why haven't you brushed your hair? No dinner for you." "I did brush it," said Pixie indignantly, "but it's the kind of hair that won't ever lie down." "No dinner today for untidy hair, and no dinner tomorrow for answering back," said Mr. Grimm. "Oh, I say, that's not really fair," said Pixie. "And no dinner for the third day for being rude," said Mr. Grimm. Pixie went out of the room, looking quite angry and sulky. Horrid Mr. Grimm! He joined all of the brownies, who were also to go without their dinner. Peter and Molly were very sorry for Pixie. When the pudding came, they tried to stuff 2 tarts into their pocket to take to him, but the pastry fell to pieces, and their pockets were all jammy and horrid. Mr. Grimm saw the crumbs of pastry around their pockets as they marched past him after dinner, and he tapped them with the wand. "Aha! Trying to stuff food into your pockets. Greedy children. No dinner for you tomorrow." Peter tried to snatch the wand away from Mr. Grimm, hoping to run and give it to Pixie. But Mr. Grimm was too fast for him and pulled it away. He roared, "Stay in after school this afternoon and write out 1,000 times, 'I must not snatch things.'" There was a little time before afternoon school. Peter and Pixie and Molly and Winks had a meeting in a far corner of the grounds. "Winks, that's my wand that Mr. Grimm has got and is using for a stick," said Pixie. Winks whistled. "Woo, I say, that's a fine bit of news. We ought to be able to do something about that." "But what?" asked Pixie. "I'm so afraid he will break my wand, and then it will be of no use. Somehow or other we've got to get it back." "Now listen," said Winks. "A wand will never turn on its owner, you know that. Well, how about this? How about this afternoon you're very, very naughty in class, and you have to go up to Mr. Grimm. Surely you can get it back then, and do a bit of magic to get yourselves free?" "Oh, yes," said Pixie, looking cheerful. "That's an awfully good idea, Winks. I had forgotten that a wand will never turn on its owner. I'm going to be very naughty, and then we'll see what happens." They all went into afternoon school feeling rather excited. What would happen? It would certainly be fun to see Pixie being so naughty to begin with, and even greater fun to see the wand refusing to punish him. Pixie began by yawning very loudly indeed. Mr. Grimm heard him and tapped hard on his desk with the wand. Crack, crack. "Pixie, you are most impolite. Stand up during the rest of the class instead of sitting." And so Pixie stood, but he stood with his back to Mr. Grimm. Mr. Grimm glared at him. "Bad Pixie, you're being impolite again. Stand around the other way." And Pixie immediately stood on his hands and waved his feet in the air, and all of the brownies laughed and they clapped. Mr. Grimm looked black as thunder. "Come here," he cried, and Pixie began to walk towards him on his hands. He looked really very funny indeed. Winks laughed until the tears rolled down his cheeks. Mr. Grimm told him to go and stand in the corner the right way up. And so Pixie stood in the corner the right way up, turning every now and then to grin at the others. Mr. Grimm began firing questions at the class. "Hands up, those who know why brownies have long beards. Hands up, those who know the magic word for disappear. Hands up, those who know why green smoke always comes out of chimneys of witches' houses. Hands up," and he didn't even wait for anyone to answer. The brownies just shot up their hands at each question and put them down again and waited for the next. Peter and Molly thought this was the silliest class they had ever attended. "And now, can anyone ask me a question I can't answer?" said Mr. Grimm. "Ha! It would take a clever brownie to do that. Be careful, because if I can answer it, you're going to have to come up here. Now, who will ask me a question that I can't answer?" The brownies had all been caught by this trick before, and so no one put up their hand. Mr. Grimm pounced on poor Winks. "You, Brownie, can't you think of a question?" "Yes, sir," said Winks at once. "I'd like to know why gooseberries wear whiskers. Do they belong to the brownie family?" Everyone roared at this ridiculous question, except Mr. Grimm. He looked as grim as his name. He rapped with his stick on the desk. "I've got a question! I've got a question!" suddenly called out Pixie, seeing a chance to get his wand. "What is it?" said Mr. Grimm with a frown. "Mr. Grimm, why do horses wear hooves instead of feet?" said Pixie. "Oh, you come here," said Mr. Grimm sternly. "That's another silly question." "I am so very angry, I'm going to break this stick in two," he cried suddenly in a rage. And that gave Pixie quite a shock. "No," he shouted, "you mustn't do that, you mustn't." "Why not?" said Mr. Grimm, and he put both hands on the wand as if to break it. Peter and Molly and Pixie watched in despair, waiting for the crack, but the wand was not going to let itself be broken. It slid out of Mr. Grimm's hands, and it shot over to Pixie, who caught it as it came. "Ha!" shouted Pixie in delight. "I've got it again, my lovely wand. I've got it." "What? Is it a wand?" cried Mr. Grimm in astonishment. "I didn't know that. Give that back to me." He snatched at it, but Pixie was skipping down the room, waving it about. "I'm going to give you all a holiday, yes I will. See my wand waving and giving you a holiday. Go out into the garden and play, all of you brownies." Oh, those brownies did not wait. They rushed out of the room at top speed, shouting and laughing, and soon only Peter, Molly, and Pixie were left with Mr. Grimm. Winks was peeping around the door. "How dare you treat me like this?" shouted Mr. Grimm, marching towards Pixie. "I'll go back, chanted Pixie, and he waved his wand at Mr. Grimm, whose feet at once took him 6 steps backward, much to his surprise. "You see, I've got magic in my wand," cried the Pixie. "Aha, I may have very powerful magic, Mr. Grimm, so be careful." "Come on, Pixie," whispered Peter. "Let's go and find the wishing chair and fly off." "But I want my doll Rosebud before we go," said Molly. "And have you forgotten about your engine and all the other toys, Peter? We must take those with us. Mr. Grimm, give us our toys." "Certainly not," said Mr. Grimm, and he shook a large key at them. "See this key? It's the key of the storeroom, which I've locked. You can't get your toys, and you never shall." "We'll see about that," said Pixie. "We'll just see about that, Mr. Grimm." And the next time we read together, it will be Chapter 13. And the name of Chapter 13 is Home, Wishing Chair, Home.